Hi there, and how are you? Today I have come to talk to you about a very sensitive issue for me. It's so sensitive that even knowing that I'm going to share this vlog with people is kind of scary. But I wanted to talk to you about my social anxiety disorder. Now, social anxiety disorder, or SAD, is more than just being nervous around people. It's like you're so nervous that you can't even confront being around people at times. The definition would be significant fear in one or more social situations a day. But I think it's more than that because if you have it from childhood on, then it's like you grow so accustomed to the fear that you can turn into a person constantly seeking adrenaline, which is why I believe that they prescribe neuroepinephrine uptake reinhibitors for it, which there are different medications that fall into that category. They also prescribe you antidepressants for it because I do believe, and there you go, there's an example of social anxiety disorder is stuttering when you start to get nervous about what you're talking about. But it can cause depression, um, and so antidepressants are also prescribed for it. And then benzodiazepines, which is anxiety medication. Me personally, I'm on an antipsychotic and anxiety medication. They also treat it with cognitive behavioral therapy, which I have never done myself, but it's supposed to retrain your brain to process the anxiety differently and know how to confront the situation. Whereas they have never, with my psychiatric treatment, they have never offered that kind of help. I've taken dialectical behavioral therapy, which is common for another mental health issue I have, borderline personality disorder, which I'm more affluenced about. But I wanted to talk to you about social anxiety disorder, even though it's such a difficult topic to talk about. And I probably will stutter through the whole video because that's just an example of the anxiety that you do experience. And also, um, I'd have to say that sort of having an inability to clear your head is another symptom of it. So I would get distracted easily. So I'm going to try to stay on topic. And it's also known as social phobia because apparently it's very, very fear induced. But I've grown so accustomed to it that no matter what my symptoms are, if I have to confront it, I can. And I believe that gave me other mental disorders along with it. But this has to be one of the first mental disorders that I ever remember experiencing. It started in childhood, and basically, I was sexualized at a very young age, and I knew that I was very different, that I was being treated differently. And I think being picked on and that kind of stigma is a huge cause for social anxiety disorder. It's actually known to be a cause for social anxiety disorder. People often feel like they're being scrutinized, either it's real or imagined. For me, it was very real because I was sexualized at such a young age and then went on to be sexualized again 4 and then 5 years old. And I was rejected in both relationships in the sense that the first one wasn't even a relationship, but I was just uh, put in the position to be what's known as molested by an older child. And then I was put in the position to actually be sexualized by a child of the same age, by 5 years old. So at school, by kindergarten, I knew that things felt weird around other children. Like I had done something that I had to be aware of at all times, but I wasn't really aware of it. It was just like this constant cloud over my head. And whatever you get picked on that causes social anxiety, I believe it has something to do with being picked on or bullying or something like that having happened to you. And I totally am against bullying. I'm glad they're making a big deal out of cyberbullying because it happens all the time, even subliminally. And for me, it can be a real trigger point. to my mental illness because that has caused my social anxiety so much. And with everything on the web, all the information, people are not staying off the internet whatsoever. So even people with social anxiety disorder socialize on the internet, and it provides them some sort of ease that they're hiding behind a camera, which I can relate to. Um, so back when I was a child, though, and there wasn't these kind of social situations where I could just socialize over the internet, I knew that I didn't have these close bonds with children, and the children kept getting taken out of my life by 6 years old. And at 6 years old was the first time I recognized it in school that no matter what I did, I was going to have this fear of walking up and talking to a kid or starting a friendship with a kid. And I'm not really sure what happened, but when I was 6, I started having the dream that I was naked in front of a classroom. And it had to do with my whole classroom having me marry a boy in front of everybody. And I'm not really sure what provoked that, but it provoked my social anxiety disorder. And I started having this feeling like I could not socialize. I just couldn't do it. And then it went on to, I was changed schools uh, every year when I was that age. So I changed schools again, and I went to school at a different school by age 7. And in that school, I had caught a disease on my mouth, cold sores. And I don't know, my mom always just said I got very sick and I caught a disease in my mouth. And with my nature having been sexualized so young, I can just imagine how I caught it. But honestly, I have no memory of it. And it was in my family, but it was just another nail in the coffin of why I felt so differently than other kids at school. And at school, I remember being so retarded that I tried to kiss a boy and he would be like, no, 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 get away from me. So it was just another example of how I ended up picked on. And whatever it is, if you come from a poor family or a bad background or you act retarded, um, it can cause you to have this anxiety. And it feels like something's following you around all the time, making you not talk to people and making you act weird. At all times, people get an impression, even if it's not true, that you're a weirdo. They get an impression of you by the way you dress. That can provoke social anxiety disorder if you grew up dressing oddly. Um, if you were really, really intelligent but you couldn't express it, it would make you seem odd. Even wearing glasses or having braces can make you seem odd and provoke social anxiety disorder. And for me as a child, I always knew it existed in school. I didn't come from the most normal background. My mother had a lot of issues, but I won't even get into that. And something like this can just follow you, even from your past, your family. And you go into school and you're not even aware of what children know about you, but it happens that children know something about you that provokes you to feel like the eyes are on you, you're the weirdo, and there's nothing you can do about it. You feel palpitations, sweating, this extreme feeling of being put on the spot, muscle tension, the inability to speak correctly, where you stammer, Wikipedia says. I call it stuttering because I do it all the time when I get nervous trying to talk to people. Or clammy hands, sweaty palms, um, different symptoms like that can just come on so strongly that you can't handle the situation. As a teenager, I got more adjusted to it, but I was still called names at all times. Skank, slut. I had to deal with extreme bullying, and I didn't even know exactly at that point why, because once I moved to New Hampshire, I sort of learned my lesson about being involved with children, because I kissed a girl at school, and I'm afraid that that stuck with me from the moment I moved to New Hampshire on, that I had done that and that people talked about it, even though she was involved too. Sometimes people can just do things to see what you're like, I guess. And I would warn anybody with anxiety about that people will try to figure out what the hell is wrong with you if something seems odd. But I stopped doing that, and the reputation just stuck with me, and I would be called slut or skank from the time that I moved to the state on. And all throughout school, it was like I could not walk up and talk to anyone. I would automatically assume that nobody liked me. It's like I couldn't even talk about myself without feeling like nobody would like me. And it still happens to this day where I'm like, nobody would like me. And I get social anxiety provokes bad thoughts in your head, like where you body shame yourself. It causes dysmorphia, where you obsess body dysmorphia, where you obsess about your flaws. Like nobody will like me if I gain weight. Nobody will like me, which leads to eating disorders, is common with social anxiety. Nobody will like me if I don't dress a certain way. And nobody will like me if I can't act a certain way. And I obsess about these things all the time to the point where I'm a little psychotic and I'll be like, I'm totally shameless and I don't care what anybody thinks. And then I'll go to the store and suddenly have a crisis where I'm having an anxiety or panic attack. A panic attack is a fight or flight response where you feel like you need to get the fuck out of there or fucking attack. I hate to swear, but panic attacks are so extreme that you can literally hyperventilate and you can't get your bearings. You don't know what to do. Today I went to the store and I would be like, I'm so shameless. I don't care what my hair looks like or the way I dress. And then I would get to the store and experience such extreme social phobia and panic attacks that I would go searching in my car for a new shirt to wear, as if that would stop it all. And that was the best way I could handle it. That was the only way I could handle it. And this has been happening to me since I was a teenager, where I would be like, fine, I'm gonna go super adrenaline on you and not even care what I wear and put on a patent leather pink shirt with a patent leather pair of pants, walk in front of the school, let everyone see me, and turn around and run away because I would suddenly have such extreme panic. And I couldn't really decide to make up my mind because this has been happening to me since I was such a young child that I wouldn't know which response was mine. Half the time I feel like my personality is split because I can't even decide which side I believe in. If I'm shameless and I would wear whatever I want, or if I'm so paranoid of the way that I dressed that time that I would refuse to go in a store unless I could change my shirt. And it completely split my personality down the middle, which is common in social phobia, that you have one or more mental disorders to go along with it, which does not ease your mind because not only do you have a mental illness, but on top of that, there's something fighting your mental illness and then fighting your fighting, and it can split you into three or four. And me, I believe that I have dissociative identity disorder, but I have never even been diagnosed with that. I've only been diagnosed with enough mental disorders to say that I have like 5 personalities, but social anxiety can be linked to bipolar disorder, which I have. It can be linked to ADD, attention deficit disorder. It can be linked to autism, where my social phobia has been so extreme before that I swore I must have Asperger's. And I've spoken with people with Asperger's, and I see the difference in me compared to them. But at one point in my life, my social phobia was so bad that no one in their right mind could tell me that I didn't have autism. And I believe that at such a young age, I caught a kissing disease, and I would practically feel like retarded because I would be one to just kiss my little friends and um, not really think anything of it. And I hate to use the word retarded because that comes with such stigma, but I have to say it in a way like I'm just insulting myself, because people with social anxiety disorder, SAD, constantly insult themselves in their head. Everything that they do is wrong. So they're constantly trying to present themselves in a way that's formal or presented well enough to the people around them that they seem uncomfortable in their own skin. I can take it to such a different level that's psychotic that I'm way too comfortable in my own skin. And that's the best way I can deal with it is with adrenaline through the heart palpitations or the muscle tension is really what I experience. I used to experience severe sweating, and because I fought it so badly, it doesn't even happen anymore. But there was such bad anxiety at one point that I would sweat severely, and I wouldn't know what to do about it. I would feel like everybody was staring at me just because I was sweating. And they say that this is a fear of social situations, but for me, it's like a fear of my uncomfortability, that I would have to feel so uncomfortable out of the blue for no reason other than thoughts in my head, and I wouldn't know how to deal with it around people. Like, I couldn't just chillax or whatever. People would even reject me for my fear of not being comfortable enough, as though every word had to be spoken correctly. If I stuttered, the whole thing would be ruined and there's nothing I could do. Now I'll just laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh, trying to get rid of the uncomfortability, but the uncomfortability never goes away. I'm stuck with it. And I sit in my house sometimes and I'm like, I can't leave the house. People would call it um, agoraphobia, but I have no problem like thinking, oh, I should leave the house. It's just that all of a sudden I'm panicking and I'm like, I cannot leave the house because I'm gonna have to face people and they're gonna pick apart my hair or my clothing or something so stupid that would be not even worth obsessing about, but you can ruminate for hours with social anxiety disorder about every social situation that's ever gone wrong, and it can make public speaking impossible. It can make just going to a party impossible, which can lead to substance abuse because you want so badly to be with people, but you feel like you have to drink or use a drug in order to be with people. And it can even provoke other people to encourage substance abuse because all of a sudden you feel so nurtured by alcohol that nature isn't so scary. And um, I wouldn't know what to say because substance abuse isn't okay, but for the most part, people with social anxiety disorder believe that if they have a few drinks, they can socialize much better than without it. And I can't help but wonder, what would the significance in alcoholism be when it comes to social anxiety disorder? Do they need to be able to drink, or does it just lead to addiction because addiction is so common with SAD? Um, what haven't I mentioned? As an adult, it led me to be very attention seeking because I thought that being around people any way that I could possibly do it, even with a guilt trip, even trying to just any way to think that, oh yeah, somebody would understand me. And I have nobody in my life because of SAD. And but I would go to such great lengths that I would hope that somebody would understand me, and it wouldn't happen because my attempts would always be of this self-pitied nature. Like, how could this be happening to me? How could I be stuck with social anxiety disorder my whole life? And I couldn't help but pity myself, which is completely rejected in this society. But I would be like, it happened so young. It's been controlling my life for so long that I believe it's created the other mental disorders I suffer with, and especially borderline personality disorder, because I would be so upset over the bad thoughts about myself and the unwillingness to find out if anybody would like me. I would constantly self-destruct. I constantly do self-destruct because I believe that if nobody will like me, then I better hide in my house forever. And the feelings are so intense that I feel like no one would ever love me. And you have to tell yourself that this isn't real, that the stigma is just carried because it is 10% of the population that do suffer with SAD at different times. And there is treatment for it. And if you have one or more problems with confronting social situations a day, you definitely need to see a doctor. Although I've been on medications for years, and the best thing I can do is confront it with adrenaline, which might include wearing a wild outfit or acting out in a way that isn't beneficial to myself, but it would help me confront the social situation. I'm losing my speaking because I know what I have to confront is, what does somebody with social anxiety disorder do besides see a doctor? Because at all times you need to tell yourself, you need to affirm yourself good things, that it's not the end of the world like a panic attack would feel, and it's not what needs to control you. I imagine that cognitive behavioral therapy helps, and it's something that I actually would like to try. But I feel like my social anxiety was so overlooked that they automatically deemed it a personality disorder. And it is linked to avoidant personality disorders, which I could see about myself, but the doctors wouldn't. They would see borderline personality disorder, and it comes from my fear of rejection and abandonment. So I do believe that abuse can be a factor linked with social anxiety disorder, something that makes you feel so not good enough. And you have to know, if you were sexually abused or physically abused, that is not who you are. And no matter what mistakes or what you didn't do socially that got you here, abuse is never a reason for you to think that nobody will like you. And you should be able to still confront people with your personality. I mean, my mother would talk to anybody and she would care less what people think of her. So I'll never understand how some people are so comfortable with themselves and other people suffer with social anxiety. Um, I would believe that, I mean, I'm kind of cute, and that maybe that would trigger some confidence, but at all times it takes so much brain power to decide to get yourself away from feeling so ashamed that nobody will like you, that you have to just wing it and go ahead and be like, hello, I'm nice, I'm polite, I am all these good things that you really know about yourself. You can self affirmate and tell yourself good things every day, even if you're struggling with some kind of fear socially, and it can be different for so many people. But I would say that the common occurrence is that you are somehow scrutinized, or you thought you were scrutinized for some reason. And if it was for just wearing glasses or having braces, I can completely relate. I had braces for 4 years, and that whole time I knew no one would want to kiss me if I had braces. And at all times, I'm just a lovey bear. I love to cuddle and be close to somebody. And my social anxiety disorder has gotten in the way so bad that in my marriage, he would have thought that my fear of him abandoning me every day for the way he cheated on me, the way our relationship went, that I would basically shut myself off, my emotions, to getting close to him. I would constantly feel like he would reject me, and my anxiety was so great that I would fear that he would reject me. And I spent 2 years in a marriage thinking he will reject me. And at all times it came out like something else. I was trying to act in a way that would be what I perceived as likable in a marriage, although my anxiety would prevent me from cleaning or presenting myself well, because it can be linked with depression as well. That's why they give you antidepressants for it. And I wouldn't like want to dress up and look nice for him or even do my hair, because I felt like maybe I would be rejected anyways. Like I never really had a chance with the social anxiety disorder. And at all times, you have to tell yourself that the bad things you hear about yourself aren't necessarily true, that people do see something good in you no matter what. And you don't want to have these cognitive distortions of yourself. That's what they're called. I saw it on Wikipedia. Cognitive distortions of yourself. You want to be able to see yourself clearly. No matter how you struggle, you have to be able to tell yourself that there are positive things out there, and that nothing is the end of the world. It's not the worst thing you can do. You can go ahead and fight those symptoms and confront social situations over and over and over again. And perhaps you think it never gets easier, but you're more and more capable of doing it. You're more and more capable of dealing with the adrenaline that it takes to be able to confront these situations, because that's what it's like for me. Although sometimes I just won't care what I look like and be completely shameless, I can still confront a social situation that way, and it's scary. It feels like the devil is lurking on your back, telling everyone you're ugly or you're fat or something stupid that prevents you from really confronting your life. And it's like life is passing you by, but you can find pleasures in things alone if the anxiety is too great to deal with. You know, you can find pleasures in enjoying your own company and doing the things you like. And people think that that might be selfish, that you're too focused on yourself. But honestly, it's just a coping mechanism, and people have to be able to cope. You know, they say try meditation or write would be a good one. Although I have difficulty even writing because my anxiety would tell me everything I write isn't good enough. Every time I try to speak to myself personally, I think it is never good enough. And you can't tell yourself that. You have to try to reverse this frame of mind that you're never good enough and just attempt to do these things. Someone told me once, count to 5 and then just do it. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Write down how scared I was to go to the grocery store and be under the fluorescent lights. And it's as simple as trying to get it out, dealing with it, and then tell yourself you are brave enough. You are a person in this society that deserves to go to the grocery store, because it sounds stupid, but honestly, there's so many people at the grocery store that it can be so overwhelming that you just want to run out, and the fluorescent lights don't help. And I just don't want to see people suffering, and I definitely don't want to see people alone with this, because that's what social anxiety disorder does, is makes you feel alone with it. I have a community, abuse sufferers anonymous. It's on G+, Nicole Collicual, that's COLLICUAL on G+. If you want to join a community for somebody that I say suffers from abuse, but I should really broaden it because I suffer from so many mental disorders that it's really also about mental illness. But it's just a community where you can be an anonymous person and still socialize and be a part of something. And please read my blog as well, where I'm discussing my childhood, and I'm getting to the part where I was 6 years old, and I talk about my social anxiety really kicking in. And I think it's important to just know that you're not alone in this world, that there's something that can be done. There's behavioral therapy, and there's medication, and there's self-affirmations. Tell yourself everything good that you know about yourself, because we can't forget that we're beautiful people and we deserve love too. Thank you for listening. Peace. Much love. Have a good night.